Ready, camera, one. Hit it.
Good morning, I'm Jim McKay speaking to you live from the Olympics in Munich, West Germany.
We started to learn more and more what an important role the media played on that day. And I was especially interested in that aspect of the day. As someone who is working in the media myself, this is something that I connected to, or that I thought, oh, wait, that this is, a world that I know in a way, and that I can maybe tell a story about this, the world of these television people. And having then listening to Jeffrey Mason and his stories of what they experienced as a crew, what challenges they faced, for example, that the police came in and at a certain point and told them to turn off their cameras. That was then the first time that after that, the writer and I, we said, like, maybe you can entirely tell it from that perspective. For the very beginning on, that was something that I found an interesting challenge, or one of the reasons why I wanted to tell it from that perspective also was from a filmmaker's point of view. I found it an interesting challenge. How do I tell a story that is taking place entirely in one location? I'm personally fascinated also with movies that achieve that, like I don't know, a movie like Hitchcock's Rear Window or so, where we're also constantly in one room, right? And the process of writing that, basically before we even started to write, we did as much research as possible. So we could talk to eyewitness Jeffrey Mason, we could talk to Jimmy Scheffler. He was one of the runners who smuggled the film material past the police barriers. And we could talk to Sean McManus. And Sean McManus is the son of the host, Jim McKay. And he was as a teenager in Munich. So listening to this first-hand memories, that was of course an important source. Then we had access to Rune Arledge wrote a biography and dedicated a whole chapter on this day. Jim McKay wrote in his biography, has a whole chapter where it describes everything that happened on that day. So these were all the important sources for when we structured the story. And then of course at a certain point we also got all the hours that ABC did send on that day. And seeing that, of course, also was an important influence then on how we structured the script, because we could see something that happened on screen, and then we try to imagine, okay, what must have happened in the control room. It is a movie about people in their work environment, so everything that they do related to work should be very accurate. And in a way, it is also, for me, it was important to give today's audience an authentic feeling of the technology back then. They should very much feel how that analog world, how long it still took, that some of the footage still had to be developed first and telecine it before it could be aired. I want to add, though, that for me, it is also, technology is also more than just a gimmick in that film, because it is actually a film about technology and about how technology has an influence on the media, and in that sense also has an influence on how we perceive world events. So we wanted for the audience to feel that whole, in a very how do you say, like, gripping way, feel that the whole apparatus in a way, very physical way. That's what the word I was looking for. In a very physical way, feel that apparatus. And so all of this technology also still had to work. And that was tricky to do sometimes. So if you ask me, is everything 100% accurate? No, maybe sometimes with these old phones, we couldn't get them to work. So we had to use tricks, because I wanted to have the conversations to happen really. So we had to have little microphones or earpieces hidden or so that the phones would actually still be, something would come out of the earpiece. The walkie-talkies were working. The phones were partly working, but if not, we always tried to hide microphones or speakers or so that still it would have that effect that it is coming from the outside. What didn't work, though, was the monitor wall. And that was really complex, because we wanted also to have these old monitors that still have the these lines. We embraced every imperfection for the audience to get a sense of how back then these images looked so different. And so to get the monitor wall to work, and also for it so that it would react if John Magara as the director would give a direction or so, that was really complicated. Editing there also plays a really important role, because the way we shot it, we just had this documentary style. The DP Marcus Furter and I, we talked about that we would just want to be like we would be a broadcast crew ourselves in the room, just live covering this event, and we wanted to have everything that's happening and it's coming from the outside to our cast to happen in real. Like we talked about, did phones work or not? Yeah, in a way, we also always wanted to have them work, so that we would just cover it with our cameras. And this like the good thing about this, it leads to this material that hopefully feels authentic and real, but it also leads to a lot of footage. So the editing, Ansjörg Weisbrich, then is really crucial on shaping the movie and giving it the right rhythm and tonality. When we do a story based on a true tragedy, it is always you're confronted with balancing that you want to be as authentic as possible to the real events and what really happened, but also still you're making a feature film and not a documentary. So you have to take certain artistic license, for example, condensing time and these things. And that is always a challenge, because you also want to be respectful to what really happened. And then from a practical point of view, yeah, something as it sounds silly, but making that monitor wall work and so in the way that I wanted it, so that the cast could really interact with it on screen, that was a big challenge.
When Tim came to me with that script, he asked me if I could, because we had this history of doing a sci-fi movie together, and he knew that I'm normally used to take a lot of creative license, and that I, like to dream and do my world building and all that. And in this case, he said, Julian, this is about accuracy. We have to be very, very authentic. And this became the main goal. And we started with a research to discover the world of the media and to understand how they work. And during that research, we were trying to find the right balance between reality and fiction, because authenticity was the main goal. But for me as a designer, I view my role as well very much in supporting the narrative and supporting the emotional world of the actors or the characters, and to bring both together, to integrate the narrative and the reality. I think this was the main challenge in the beginning. And I think at some point we found quite a good way when we decided to be very, very accurate and 100% precise about all the props and the technical aspects, and to take a bit more creative freedom when it comes to architecture and the studio build. And still, we were working based on the original blueprints that we found eventually in one of these basements or storages of the TV broadcasters. And then we took the blueprint, and I tried to design a more drama version of this original ABC TV studio. I think you could still, hold one next to another and you would understand this is the original ABC studio set. But for a few reasons, we needed to change a few things. First of all, we had the intention to create a set that is a contained space. And this was because we wanted to have the freedom to maneuver inside the studio set. And the way Tim and Marcus, the DP, planned to shoot, it was a very journalistic way as well. They wanted to be like a documentary team inside the control room, inside the studio, following the crew and following the narrative. We wanted to create a set where the actors themselves would enter and would never, like exit the set again. So, the set became like a time machine. So the studio, the exterior studio, we made the exterior studio work from the real studio with some set decoration and set extension. And once you open the door and you get inside, you would be, I wouldn't say lost, but you would be trapped. They could go inside and they never look behind a curtain. There was, if you would open a door, there was another set, another set. And even the emergency exits were integrated in the set.
We talked early on about it because it's like visually quite a claustrophobic concept, right? To not show the world or be very sparse with what the audience can see. And I like from day one, I found it quite an interesting challenge because I also love films that when they pull it off to take place at like a very confined space. And we just talked about how can we bring in scope, like what we can't show sweeping helicopter shots, but instead we have like a character running in with a big map, putting it down on a table, explaining we're here. If we put our studio camera right there, we get a straight shot, and like just following a finger on a map with a camera move becomes our aerial shot, so to say. And I think why people react so well to the film is because so much happens in the imagination of the viewer, right? And I think that's what creates attention. Like, how they always say, don't show like by just we I think most of us know what happened, but by not being able to see in real time what's actually going on, I think that's where the tension comes from, and that's what those characters went through. So we had to build this on a soundstage, and we had the original plan, so there was almost no windows, maybe like 1 or 2 windows in the front end, but we decided on purpose, let's have no windows at all, so the footage becomes our window to the world. And that was such an important concept for me for like lighting this and how we shoot it, that really in those dark rooms, the analog TV screens should become the main key light source. So we really, as an audience member, how you always look at the brightest part in a frame, we're really drawn to it and can't take our eyes off it, trying to replicate the sensation what we believe people went through watching that live broadcast at home on the television. Throughout the scenes, especially in the control room, there's this big wall of TV monitors, and above, just out of camera, is a row of movie lights, it's like LED lights, which mimic exactly the color and the feed of these images. And we pre-programmed this in pre-production certain flicker frequencies. So for low tension scenes, it's more quiet, but it's always established. And as like, for example, when we see the masked man stepping on a balcony for the first time, and everybody's shocked by this, we go to a higher flicker frequency. And we could dynamically ramp this throughout the scene. So, and it's quite effective. And that's what I love about what I do as a cinematographer, is people don't pay attention to this directly, but subconsciously, I think it has quite an impact how the scene feels.
That was a key kind of thing that Tim wanted the audience to understand through the character of the sound itself, like learning how the connections are actually patched through, because you have so many different levels of, let's say, distorted lines coming into the studio that we hear. So there's you have actual phone lines and the audience being with the protagonist inside the receiver. Then we have the speaker phone, like an open speaker in the room for everyone to hear. Then the phone line is patched through the console onto the main monitors of the control room itself. Yeah, I tried to re-record a lot of these sounds through an actual FM radio transmitter with someone, let's say an example, Marianne, when she walks to the Olympic Village, talking over the walkie-talkie back to the control room. You hear her footsteps walking and her breath. That's actually an actual recording of someone walking down the street, breathing into an actual walkie-talkie, that being transmitted back to my studio and me recording it over the speaker and put into the film on top of the layer of the dialogue that you hear. So those were like these small, let's say, in the end you think like, well, she's walking on the street speaking over walkie-talkie, right? But it took some real effort to create that illusion, I would say. And all the stuff that you hear that is coming over speakers or is like full screen. Sometimes the camera zooms into these monitors and then you blend over to an actual full screen, still TV, but like more like an immersive, the audience diving into the actual TV set, if you will. That subtle change to the audio was kind of really important to heighten the tension in these scenes. Like there's this moment where we see this iconic black and white image of the terrorists on the balcony, and the camera keeps zooming in, and there's not really we didn't want to create this like tense moment by pushing everything over the cliff, like make it kind of more dangerous, because it was already dangerous. So what you hear is just the crackle of the static coming over the speaker, and the buzz, the electrostatic buzz of the TV kind of blending in with the music that kind of let's say zooms into the monitor as well. So we're kind of more subtle elements to let's say use the organic sounds that were around in the control room, and use those rather than putting artificial stuff on top and kind of making it overall, let's say, designy in a way.
The archive footage was already an integral part of the script, though of course we altered that in the editing and found some other parts of it, but like the character of Jim McKay was from the beginning was planned to tell with the original footage, because Tim didn't feel comfortable to reenact a personality like Jim McKay with his unique style of reporting, and also the iconic scene in the end when he finally has to make the final announcement. So that was the decision early on in the process to tell that with the original footage, and we were very lucky to have finally got access to the original footage and were allowed to use it. It seemed all very old-fashioned, but fascinating how they would be able to to work with the technique they had at the time. Like, for example, the film had to be developed, and they had to wait actually for the pictures. That is something we can't even imagine today, where everything is instant. And so that also was a structural device for the editing, because we hear reporting without being able to show the actual pictures, but show the pictures afterwards, and that has a big impact. Like, for example, the scene where we first see the masked man. We have heard Jennings telling what he's experiencing out there, but when we actually, and that is already horrifying, but when we actually see the pictures, that has an even bigger impact. A lot of that happens in audio only, but we did work hard on getting the emotion and the atmosphere in the studio, the stress level, and the reactions of the whole team on what they are actually being told by a phone, and given the fact that the events were so tragic and shocking, I think we were able to showcase that only with the reactions of the people in the studio. We never leave the studio side, but it feels so lively and so natural to integrate the footage from outside that I think the viewer wouldn't be able to tell that we never left the studio, and that is a big achievement, I think, of our whole artistic crew. Also, the camera department, like the DOP, Markus Förderer, and the production designer Julian Wagner, because it's mainly them, of course, that created that experience.